ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaskar, my dear friends. This is fourth video on the teachings of Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi in his own words. This video starts with chapter 3, Life in the World. Once anyone decided to proceed from theory to practice on the basis of Bhagwan's teachings, the question was apt to arise how that affected his life in the world. Hinduism does not necessarily enjoin physical renunciation for active spiritual seekers, as did, for instance, the original teachings of Christ or Buddha. On the contrary, the state of the householder is honored and the path of right action is a legitimate path. In fact, the classical system in ancient India was that a man should retire from the homeless state only after he had fulfilled his duties as a householder and had an adult son or sons to replace him. However, the doctrine of non-duality, together with the path of self-inquiry to be described in a later chapter, which is based on it, has been traditionally recognized as suitable to the world renouncer. It was therefore natural that Bhagwan's followers often asked him whether they should renounce the world. At the same time, it was a remarkable indication of the amount of spiritual determination which still remains in modern India, for renouncing the world does not mean living a solitary life in a little house and garden of one's own, as it might in the West, or even retiring to the austere security of a monastery, but going forth homeless and penniless, depending on the charitable for food and clothing, and sleeping in a cave or temple or wherever possible. It does not sometimes happen in modern times that a sadhu accepts a small grant from his family, enough to buy food and the simplest clothing. But even so, it is a bare, hard life. Nevertheless, there were constant requests to be allowed to take this life, and constantly Bhagwan withheld permission. The work was internal and had to be done in the mind, whatever the conditions of life. Bhagwan, why do you think you are a householder? The similar thought that you are a sannyasi will haunt you even if you go forth as one. Whether you continue in the household or renounce it and go to live in the forest, your mind haunts you. The ego is the source of thought. It creates the body and the world and makes you think of being a householder. If you renounce, it will only substitute the thought of renunciation for that of the family and the environment of the forest for that of the household. But the mental obstacles are always there for you. They even increase greatly in the new surroundings. Change of environment is no help. The one obstacle is the mind. This must be overcome whether in the home or in the forest. If you can do it in the forest, why not in the home? So why change the environment? Your efforts can be made even now. Whatever be the environment, devotee, is it possible to enjoy samadhi while busy with worldly work? Bhagwan, it is the feeling I work that is the hindrance. Ask yourself who works. Remember who you are, then the work will not bind you. It will go on automatically. Make no effort either to work or to renounce. Your effort is the bondage. Whatever is Whatever is destined to happen will happen. If you are destined to work, you will not be able to avoid it. You will be forced to engage in it. So leave it to the higher power. It is not really your choice whether you re- renounce or return. When women carrying jars of water on their heads stop to talk, they are very careful keeping their mind on the water jars. Similarly, when a sage engages in activity, his mind remains fixed in the self and his activity does not distract him. Devotee, I believe celibacy is necessary even for a householder if he is to succeed in self-inquiry. Am I right, Bhagwan? First find out who the wife and husband are, then the question will not arise. Devotee, is not brahmacharya, celibacy necessary for realization of the self, Bhagwan? Brahmacharya means living in Brahma. It has no connection with celibacy as commonly understood. A real brahmachari is one who lives in Brahma and finds bliss in Brahma, which is the same as the self. Why then should he look for other sources of happiness? In fact, it is emergence from the self that is the cause of misery. Devotee, but is not celibacy necessary for yoga, Bhagwan? It is one aid to realization among many others. Devotee, then it is not indispensable. Can a married man realize the self? Bhagwan, certainly. It is a question of fitness of mind. Married or unmarried, a man can realize the self because the self is here and now. If it were not but were obtainable by some effort at some future time. If it were something new to be acquired, it would not be worth seeking. Because what is not natural cannot be permanent. What I say is the self is here and now, and that it alone is devotee. Is it necessary to take sannyasa, a vow of renunciation, in order to attain self-realization? Bhagwan. Sannyasa means renouncing one's individuality, not shaving one's head and putting on ochre robes. A man may be householder, but if he does not think he is one, he is a sannyasin. On the other hand, he may wear ochre robes and wander about. But so long as he thinks he is a sannyasin, he is not one. To think about one's renunciation defeats the purpose of renouncing. What do you mean by taking sannyasa? Do you think it means leaving your home or wearing robes of a certain color? Wherever you go, even if you fly up into the air, will your mind not go with you? Or can you leave it behind you and go without it? Why should your occupation or duties in life interfere with your spiritual effort? For instance, there is a difference between your activities at home and in the office. In your office activities, you are detached, and so long as you do your duty, you do not care what happens or whether it results in gain or loss to the employer. Your duties at home, on the other hand, are performed with attachment, and you are all the time anxious whether they will bring advantage to you and your family. But it is possible to perform all the activities of life with detachment and regard only the self as real. It is wrong to suppose that if one is fixed in the self, one's duties in life will not be properly performed. It is like an actor, he dresses and acts and even feels the part he is playing. But he knows really that he is not that character but someone else in real life. In the same way, why should the body consciousness or the feeling I am the body disturb you? Once you know for certain that you are not the body but the self, nothing that the body does should shake you from avoidance in the self. Such abidance will never interfere with the proper and effective discharge of whatever duties the body has any more than an actor's being aware of his real status in life interferes with his acting a part on the stage. Devotee. It has been definitely stated that so long as there is the least trace of the I am the doer idea, there can be no realization. But is it possible for a householder who earnestly earnestly desires liberation to fulfill his duty without this idea? Bhagwan. There is no principle that action can be performed only on the basis of the I am the doer idea, and therefore there is no reason to ask whether they can be performed and the duties discharged without that idea. To take a common example, an accountant working all day in his office and scrupulously attending to his duties might seem to the spectator to be shouldering all the financial responsibilities of the institution. But knowing that he is not personally affected by the intake or outgoings, he remains unattached and free from the I am the doer feeling in doing his work, while at the same time he does it perfectly well. In the same way, it is quite possible for the wise householder who earnestly seeks liberation to discharge his duties in life, which after all are his destiny, without any attachment, regarding himself merely as an instrument for the purpose. Such activity is not an obstacle on the path of knowledge, nor does knowledge prevent a man from discharging his duties in life. Knowledge and activity are never mutually antagonistic, and the realization of one does not impede performance of the other, nor performance of one the realization of the other. Devotee, what is the significance of the life of a spiritually minded householder who has to devote all his time merely to earning a living and supporting his family, and what mutual benefit do they get? Bhagwan. The discharge of his duties by a householder such as this who works for the support of his family, quite unmindful of his own physical comforts in life, should he regard as selfless service rendered to his family, whose needs it is his destiny to meet. It may, however, be asked what benefit such a householder derives from the family. The answer is that there is no benefit for him from the family as such, since he has made the discharge of his duties to them a means of spiritual training, and since he finally obtains perfect contentment by realizing the supreme bliss of liberation, which is the ultimate goal of every path and the supreme reward. He therefore stands in a need of nothing from the members of his family or from his family life. Devotee, how can a householder who is constantly engaged in the active discharge of his domestic duties, which should naturally impel him to still greater activity, obtain the supreme peace of withdrawal and freedom from the urge to such activity even while thus busily engaged? Bhagwan, it is only to the spectator that the enlightened householder seems to be occupied with his domestic duties, for even though apparently engaged in domestic duties, he is not really engaged in any activity at will. His outer activity does not prevent him from realizing the perfect peace of withdrawal, and he is free from the restless urge to activity even in the midst of his activities. Visitor, should I retire from business and take to reading books on Vedanta? Bhagwan, if objects have an independent existence, that is, if they exist somewhere apart from you, then it may be possible for you to retire from them, but they do not. They owe their existence to you, to your thought, so where can you retire from them? As for reading books on the Vedanta, you can go on reading any number, but they can only tell you to realize the self within you. The self cannot be found in books. You have to find it from yourself in yourself. Devotee, is a vow of silence useful? Bhagwan, the inner silence is self-surrender, and that means living without the sense of ego. Devotee, is solitude necessary for a sannyasin? Bhagwan, solitude is in the mind of a man. One may be in the thick of the world and yet maintain perfect serenity of mind. Such a person is always in solitude. Another may live in the forest but still be unable to control his mind. He cannot be said to be in solitude. Solitude is in attitude of the mind. A man attached to the things of life cannot get solitude wherever he may be, whereas a detached man is always in solitude. As this implies, Bhagwan did not approve of a vow of silence such as people sometimes take in order to create a sort of solitude in the society. The real silence, he taught, is still mind. If the mind is active, there is no benefit in not speaking. What is needed is to control both thought and speech. The silence of solitude is forced. Restrained speech in society is equivalent to silence. For then a man control his speech, there must be a speaker before there can be speech. If the mind of the speaker is engaged, otherwise speech is restrained. When the mind is turned inwards, it is active in a different way and is not anxious to speak. The purpose of a vow of silence is to limit the mental activities provoked by speech, but if the mind is controlled, this is unnecessary and silence becomes natural. Until the mind is ripe to do so, it is not even possible to give up the activity. Devotee, how does activity help? Does not it simply increase the already heavy load upon us that we have to get rid of? Bhagwan, action performed unselfishly purifies the mind and helps it to fix itself and in meditation, devotee. But suppose one were to meditate constantly without activity. Bhagwan, try and see. Your inherent tendencies will not let you. Meditation only comes step by step with their gradual weakening by the grace of the Guru. In the case of one who had fulfilled his destiny as a householder and having grown up children to take his place, could have renounced the world according to the classical Indian tradition, Bhagwan still did not give his sanction. Devotee, I have no pleasure in my family. There remains nothing for me to do there. I have done what has to be done, and now there are grandsons and granddaughters in the house. Should I remain there or should I leave it and go away? Bhagwan, you should stay just where you are now. But where are you now? Are you in the house or is the house in you? Is there any house apart from you? If you become established in your own place, you will find that all things have merged into you and such questions will become unnecessary. Devotee, then it seems I am to remain at home. Bhagwan, you are to remain in your true state. Sometimes the Maharshi was asked why he himself renounced the world and went forth to the homeless life if he did not approve of that path for his followers, and he replied merely that such was his destiny. It is to be remembered that the path he taught, the use of self-inquiry in the life of the world combined with harmonious action, is a new path created by him to meet the needs of our time. He himself had to be established in realization before he could establish the path here too. Devotee, can I engage in spiritual practice even while remaining in the life of the world? Bhagwan, yes, certainly one ought to do so. Devotee, is not life in the world a hindrance? Don't all the books advocate renunciation? Bhagwan, the world is only in the mind. It does not speak out saying, I am the world. If it did, it would have to be always present even in your sleep. Since it is not present in sleep, it is impermanent. Being impermanent, it has no reality. Having no reality, it is easily subdued by the self. The self alone is permanent. Renunciation is non-identification of the self with the non-self. On the disappearance of ignorance, the non-self ceases to accept. That is true renunciation. Devotee, why then did you leave your home in your youth? Bhagwan, that was my prarabdha destiny. One's course of conduct in this life is determined by one's prarabdha. My prarabdha lies this way, yours lies that way. Devotee, should I not also renounce? Bhagwan, if that had been your prarabdha, the question would not have arisen. Devotee, then I take it that I should remain in the world and engage in spiritual practice. But if I do so, can I obtain realization in this life? Bhagwan, this has already been answered. You are always the self. Earnest efforts never fail. Success is bound to result. With many European and some Indian visitors, it was the opposite question that arose, not whether they should renounce the world, but what they could do to help it, being in the world but not of it, following the inner spiritual quest while outwardly conforming to the conditions of life seemed to them too much of a withdrawal, not too little. To some extent, Bhagwan's answers varied according to the understanding of the questioner. If the latter was capable of spiritual understanding, he would turn his uh, turn him inward. Devotee, why is the world enveloped in ignorance? Bhagwan, look after yourself and let the world look after itself. What is yourself? If you are the body, there is a physical world also. But if you are the spirit, there is only spirit visitor. What do you think about social reform, Bhagwan? Self-reform automatically results in social reform. Attend to self-reform and social reform will take care of itself. However, people who raised this sort of objection were more often of a devotional temperament, such as requires worship and a dualistic religion, and in such cases Bhagwan would enjoin submission to God. All that is required is to submit to God and do one's duty, play one's part in life with full confidence. That is all that is asked of one. One is not responsible for the outcome. Bhagwan, now I will ask you a question. When a man gets into a train, where does he put his luggage? Devotee, either in the compartment or in the luggage van. Bhagwan, he does not carry it on his head or in his lap while in the train. Devotee, only a fool would do so. Bhagwan, it is 1,000 times more foolish to bear your own burden once you have undertaken the spiritual quest, whether by the path of knowledge or devotion. Devotee, but can I relinquish all my responsibilities, all my commitments? Bhagwan, you remember the temple tower. There are many statues on it, are not there? Well, there are four big ones at the base, one at each corner. Have you seen them, devotee? Yes. Bhagwan, well, I tell you that the huge tower is supported by these four statues. Devotee, how is that possible? What does Bhagwan mean? Bhagwan, I mean that to say that is no more foolish than saying that you bear all the cares, burdens, and responsibilities of life. The Lord of the universe bears the whole burden. You only imagine that you do. You can hand over all your burdens to Him. Whatever you have to do, you will be made an instrument for doing it at the right time. Do not imagine that you cannot do it unless you have the desire to. It is not a desire that gives you the necessary strength. The strength is the Lord's. Sometimes there was a more pressing anxiety about the state of the world and a desire to assume responsibility. Devotee, will Bhagwan give his opinion on the future of the world as we are living in critical times? Bhagwan, why should you worry about the future? You don't even know the present properly. Take care of the present and the future will take care of itself. Devotee, will the world soon enter a new era of friendliness and mutual help, or will it go down in chaos and war? Bhagwan, there is one who governs the world and it is his task to look after it. He who has given life to the world knows how to look after it also. He bears the burden of this world, not you. Devotee, yet if one looks around with unprejudiced eyes, it is hard to see where this benevolent care comes in. Bhagwan, as you are, so is the world. Without understanding yourself, what is the use of trying to understand the world? This is a question that seekers after truth need not worry about. People waste their energy over all such questions. First, find out the truth behind yourself, then you will be in a better position to understand the truth behind the world of which you are a part. Another visitor asked Bhagwan for a benedictory foreword to a book he had written called The Destiny of the Freedom or something of that sort. He said that someone else had already agreed to write an introduction, but he would be grateful if Bhagwan would write a few words conveying his message and blessing. Bhagwan explained to him that he had never done such a thing and therefore should not be expected to now. The visitor persisted and I went to some trouble to convince him that all his persuasion would be in vain. Then he began saying that the world badly needs a spiritual message and that the youth of India and of the world are not properly brought up since religion is not instilled into them and so forth. I had to tell him that Bhagwan holds that before a man tries to reform the world, he should first know himself and then he can go about reforming the world if he still feels so inclined. I believe that the visitor was for continuing the argument, but fortunately it was time for the prayanam, prayanam, recital of the Vedas, and he was effectively stopped thereby. Devotee, should I try to help the suffering world? Bhagwan, the power that created you created the world as well. If God created the world, it is His business to look after it, not yours. Nevertheless, this does not mean that Bhagwan's teaching condoned coldness or callousness to human suffering. Those who were in distress had to be helped only. They had to be helped in a spirit of humanity. What was forbidden was only the self-importance inherent in trying to act the part of providence. This is made very clear in the following passage. Devotee, but we see pain in the world. A man is hungry, it is a physical reality. It is very real to him. Are we to call it a dream and remain unmoved by his suffering? Bhagwan, from the point of view of jnana or reality, the suffering you speak of is certainly a dream, as is the world of which that suffering is an infinitesimal part. In a dream you have, when you are asleep, you yourself feel hunger and see others also suffering from hunger. You feel yourself and moved by pity, feed the others who are hungry. So long as the dream lasted, all this suffering was quite as real as the suffering you see in the world is to you now. It was only when you woke up that you discovered it to be unreal. You might have eaten heartily before going to sleep, but you still dreamed that you had been working hard in the hot sun all day and were tired and hungry. Then you woke up and found that your stomach was full and that you had not stirred from your bed. But all this is not to say that while you are in the dream you can act as if the suffering you feel in it is not real. The hunger in the dream has to be appeased by dream food. The fellow beings you find hungry in the dream have to be provided with dream food. You can never mix the two states, the dream and the waking state. Similarly, till you attain the state of realization and thus wake out of this illusory phenomenal world, you must do social service by relieving suffering whenever you see it. But even so, you must do it without ahankara, that is, without the sense of it is I who am doing it. Instead, you should feel I am the Lord's instrument. Similarly, you must not be conceited and think I am helping a man who is below me. He needs help and I am in a position to give it. I am superior and he is inferior. You must help him as a means of worshipping God in him. All such service is serving the self, not anybody else. You are not helping anybody else but only yourself. In general, Bhagwan discouraged political activity among those dedicated to the quest. Devotee, is it not our duty to be patriots? Bhagwan, it is your duty to be and not to be this or that. I am that I am sums up the whole of the truth. The method is summarized in be still. However, when people who were engaged in political life approached him, he would simply advise them to carry on in a spirit of service and surrender, seeking to eliminate all egoism from their work. Devotee, is the desire for Swaraj independence right? Bhagwan, such desire no doubt begins with self-interest, yet practical work for the goal gradually widens the outlook so that the individual becomes merged in the country. Such merging of the individuality is desirable and the karma in question is Niskama, unselfish devotee. If self-government for India is granted after a long struggle and a terrible sacrifice, is one not justified in being pleased with the result and elated by it? Bhagwan, in the course of one's work, one must have surrendered oneself to the highest power whose might must be kept in mind and never lost sight of it. How then can one be elated? One should not even care for the result of one's action. Then alone the karma becomes unselfish. Gandhiji has surrendered himself to the divine and works accordingly with no self-interest. He does not concern himself with the results but accepts them as they turn up. That must be the attitude of national workers. Question. Will the work be crowned with success, Bhagwan? This question arises because the questioner has not surrendered himself. Question. Should we then not think of and work for the welfare of the country? Bhagwan, first take care of yourself and the rest will naturally follow. Question. I am not speaking individually but for the country. Bhagwan, first surrender and then see. Doubts arise because of the absence of surrender. Acquire strength by surrender and then your surrounding will be found to have improved to the degree of strength acquired by you. Persons whose temperament drew them to activity and who found it hard to understand that spiritually there are no others, queried whether there was not some egoism in seeking their own realization, not understanding that the very expression their own did not apply and that not merely egoism but the ego itself had to be renounced. Bhagwan himself was asked why he did not go about preaching to the people. Devotee, why does not Sri Bhagwan go about preaching the truth to the people at large? Bhagwan, how do you know that I don't? Does preaching consist in mounting a platform and haranguing the people around? Preaching is simple communication of knowledge and can be done in silence too. What do you think of a man listening to a harangue for an hour and going away with being impressed by it so as to change his life? Compare him with another who sits in a holy presence and leaves after some time with his outlook on life totally changed. Which is better, to preach loudly without effect or to sit silently sending forth the intuitive force to act on others? Again, how does speech arise? First, there is abstract knowledge unmanifest. From this there arises the ego which gives rise to thoughts and words successively. So then abstract knowledge leads to ego, to thoughts, to words. Words therefore are the great grandsons of the original source. If words can produce an effect, consider how much more powerful preaching through silence must be. Bhagwan answered those who doubted its utility that realization was the greatest help they could possibly render to others. Indeed, Bhagwan himself was the standing proof of this, as one saw from the numbers of people helped to the very depth of their being, lifted out of the confusion and sorrow onto a firm path of peace and understanding by the silent influence of His grace. And yet at the same time He reminded them that from the point of view of knowledge there are no others to help. Devotee, does my realization help others? Bhagwan, yes, certainly it is the best possible help, but really there are no others to help. For a realized being sees only the self, just as a goldsmith estimating the gold in various jewels sees only the good. Separate forms and beings exist only as long as you identify yourself with the body. When you transcend the body, others disappear along with your body consciousness. Devotee, is it so with plants and trees also? Bhagwan, do they exist at all apart from the self? Find out. You think that you see them. The thought is projected from yourself. Find out where from it arises. Then thoughts will cease to rise and the self alone will remain. Devotee, I understand theoretically, but they are still there. Bhagwan, yes, it is like a cinema show. There is the light on the screen and the shadows fleeting across impress the audience as the acting of some story. Now suppose that in this film story an audience is also shown on the screen. The seer and the seen will then both be on the screen. Apply this to yourself. You are the screen. The self has created the ego. The ego has its accretions of thoughts which are displayed as the world, trees, plants, etc., about which you are asking. In reality, all these are nothing but the self. If you see the self, it will be found to be all, everywhere and always. Nothing but the self exists. The same was explained to Mr. Evans Wenge, the well-known writer about Tibet. Evans Wenge. They say that there are many saints in Tibet who remain in solitude and are still very helpful to the world. How can that be? Bhagwan, it can be so. Realization of the self is the greatest help that can be rendered to humanity. Therefore, saints are said to be helpful even though they remain in the forest. But it should not be forgotten that solitude is not to be found in forest only. It can be had even in towns in the thick of worldly occupation. Evans Venge. Is not it necessary that saints should mix with people and be the helpful to them? Bhagwan, the self alone is the reality, the world and the rest of it are not. The realized being does not see the world as different from himself. Evans Venge. Then does that mean that a man's realization leads to the uplift of mankind without their being aware of it? Bhagwan, yes, the help is imperceptible, but it is still there. A realized man helps the whole of mankind, although without their knowledge. Evans Venge. Would not it be better if he mixed with others? Bhagwan, there are no others to mix with. The self is the one and only one reality. Evans wins. If there were 100 self-realized men, would not it be to the greater benefit of the world? Bhagwan, when you say self, you refer to the unlimited, but when you add man to it, you limit the meaning. There is only one infinite self. Evans wins. Yes, I see. Sri Krishna said in the Gita that work must be performed without attachment, and such work is better than idleness is that karma yoga. Bhagwan, what is said is adapted to the temperament of the listener. Advancement. In Europe, people do not understand that a man can be helpful in solitude. They imagine that only men who work in the world can be useful. When will this confusion cease? Will the European mind continue wading in the morass or will it realize the truth? Bhagwan, never mind about Europe or America. Where are they but in the mind? Realize your self and then all is realized. If you see a number of men in a dream and then wake up and recall your dream, do you try to find out whether the persons of your dream creation are also awake? A self-realized being cannot help benefiting the world. His very existence is the highest good. Chapter number 4, The Guru. It has always been taught that in order to attain a realization, not only practice but also a guide is needed. In this, as in all things, Bhagwan gave the doctrine its deepest meaning. In fact, it became essentially the same as the Christian doctrine of the Christ in you or the Buddhist doctrine of the Buddha mind, which is to be realized in oneself. Devotee, Bhagwan has said that without the grace of the Guru, one cannot attain the self. What precisely does he mean by this? What is this Guru? Bhagwan, from the standpoint of the path of knowledge, it is the supreme state of the self. It is different from the ego which you call yourself. Devotee, then if it is the supreme state of my own self, in what sense does Bhagwan mean that I cannot reach it without the grace of the Guru? Bhagwan, the ego is the individuality and is not the same as the Lord of all. When it approaches the Lord with sincere devotion, he graciously assumes name and form and take it to himself. Therefore, they say that the Guru is none other than the Lord. He is the human embodiment of divine grace. This would seem to mean then that the Guru is the Lord or the Self manifested outwardly in human form, and that this outward manifestation is necessary. But the questioner in the present instance was not convinced of this, since he knew that Bhagwan himself had no human Guru, and that there are other cases on record also, especially among the founders of religions. He therefore continued, devotee. But there are some who seem to have had no human guru at all. Bhagwan. True, in the case of certain great souls, God reveals himself as the light of the light from within. In occasionally happened it occasionally happened that some questioner would openly raise the objection that Bhagwan himself had not a guru, and in such cases his reply would be that the guru need not necessarily take human form. Some who knew his teaching at second hand suggested that he did not hold it necessary to have a guru and explained the lack of explicit initiation in that way, but he rejected this suggestion unequivocally. Unequivocally, S.S. Cohen has recorded a conversation on this subject with Dilip Kumar Roy, the celebrated musician of Sri Aurobindo Ashram. Dilip. Some people report Maharshi to deny the need of a guru. Others say the reverse. What does Maharshi say? Bhagwan, I have never said that there is no need for a guru. Dilip, Sri Aurobindo often refers to you as having had no guru. Bhagwan, that depends on what you call guru. He need not necessarily be in human form. Dattatreya had 24 gurus, the elements and so on. That means that any form in the world was his guru. Guru is absolutely necessary. The Upanishads say that none but a guru can take a man out of the jungle of mental and sense perception. So there must be a guru. Dilip, I mean a hundred. I mean a human guru. The Maharshi did not have one. Bhagwan, I might have had at some time or other, and did not I sing Hymans to Arunachala? What is a Guru? Guru is God or the Self. First a man prays to God to fulfill his desire, then a time comes when he does not pray for the fulfillment of a desire but for God Himself. So God appears to him in some form or other, human or non-human, to guide him as a guru in answer to his prayer. It was only when some visitor brought up the subject that Sri Bhagavan himself had a, himself had not had a guru, that he explained that the guru need not necessarily take on a human form, and it was understood that this referred to a very rare cases. I shall return to this question later, but wish immediately to consider the implication of the saying that God, Guru, and Self are the same. In the ordinary sense of the word, a Guru is one who has been invested with the right to initiate disciples and prescribe a spiritual discipline for them. And in this case, a proper investiture is necessary to validate his actions as a guru, just as proper ordination is necessary to validate the religious rites performed by a priest. A mass said by a duly ordained priest would be valid, whereas one said by a man of greater moral integrity and intellectual power who was not an ordained priest would not, and in exactly the same way the geniusness of a guru and validity of his initiation and discipline is normally dependent rather than on his legitimate investiture as the successor to a line of gurus than on his own inherent attainments. Bhagwan was little interested in this interpretation of the word guru, but he did not accept it when asked. Devotee, can one derive any benefit from repeating incantations picked up casually without being initiated into them? Bhagwan, no. One must be initiated into them and authorized to use them. Bhagwan then illustrated this saying by the following story. A king once visited his minister at the latter's house. There he was told that the minister was busy with his incantations. The king accordingly waited for him, and when he was free to meet him, asked him what incantation it was. The minister told him that it was the Gayatri. The king then asked the minister to initiate him into the use of it, but the latter declared that he was unable to. Thereupon the king learnt it from someone else, and the next time he met the minister, he repeated it to him and asked him whether it was right. The minister replied that the incantation was right, but that it was not right for him to say it. The king asked why. The minister called an attendant who was standing nearby and told him to arrest the king. The order was not obeyed. The minister repeated it, and still it was not obeyed. The king then flew into a temper and ordered the attendant to arrest the minister, which he immediately did. The minister laughed and said that that was the explanation the king had asked for. How? The king asked. Because the order was the same and the executive was the same, but the authority was different. When I pronounced the order, there was no effect, but when you did it, the effect was immediate. It is the same with incantations. Normally, however, Bhagwan said Guru, he meant something far greater than this, something different, not in degree but in kind. He meant Satguru or Guru Deva, and that too in its highest meaning as nothing less than one who has realized his identity with the self and abides therein constantly. Devotee, what are the distinctive characteristics of a guru by which one can recognize him? Bhagwan, the Guru is one who at all times abides in the profound depths of the self. He never sees any difference between himself and others and is quite free from the idea that he is the enlightened or the liberated one, while those around him are in bondage or the darkness of ignorance. His self-possession can never be shaken under any circumstances and he is never perturbed. Devotee, what is the essential nature of Upadesa or spiritual instruction given by the Guru? Bhagwan, the word Upadesa literally means restoring an object to its proper place. The mind of the disciple having become differentiated from its true and primal state of pure being, which is the self and which is described in the scriptures as a Satchitananda being consciousness bliss, slips away therefrom and assuming the form of thought constantly pursues objects of sense gratification. Therefore, it is assailed by the vicissitudes of life and becomes weak and dispirited. Upadesa consists in the Guru restoring it to primal state and preventing it from slipping away from the state of pure being of absolute identity with the self, or in other words, the being of the Guru. The word can also be understood as meaning to present an apparently distant object to close view. That is to say, it consists in the Guru showing the disciple what he had considered as distant and different from himself to be immediate and identical with himself. Devotee, if as this implies the real being of the Guru is identical with that of the disciple, why have the scriptures categorically declared that however great powers one may attain, he cannot attain self-realization without the grace of the Guru? Bhagwan, it is true that the being of the Guru is identical with that of the disciple. However, it is very seldom that a person can realize his true being without the grace of the Guru. It is not really the bodily individual that is the Guru. Bhagwan, what is your idea of a Guru? You think of him in human shape as a body of certain dimensions, complexion, and so on. A disciple, after realization, once said to his Guru, I now realize that you dwell in my innermost heart as the one reality in all my countless births and have now come before me is human shape and lifted this veil of ignorance. What can I do for you in return for such a great benefit? And the Guru replied, you need not do anything, it is enough if you remain as you are in your true state. That is the truth about the Guru. Bhagwan often explained that the divine guide, the true Guru, is in one's heart as well as being manifested outwardly, while the outward Guru turns one's mind inwards. The inner Guru pulls from within. Even one's environment does not happen by accident. The Guru creates the conditions necessary for one's quest. Devotee, what is the grace of the Guru? Bhagwan, the Guru is the self. At some time, a man grows dissatisfied with his life and not content with what he has, seeks the satisfaction of his desires through prayer to God. His mind is gradually purified until he longs to know God more to obtain his grace than to satisfy worldly desires. Then God's grace begins to manifest. God takes the form of a Guru and appears to the devotee, teaches him the truth, and moreover purifies his mind by association with him. The devotee's mind thus gains strength and is then able to turn inward. By meditation, it is further purified and until it remains calm without the least ripple. That calm expanse is the self. The Guru is both outer and inner. From outside, he gives a push to the mind to turn inward, while from inside, he pulls the mind toward the self and helps in quieting it. That is the grace of the Guru. There is no difference between God, Guru, and self. Devotee, in the Theosophical Society, they meditate in order to seek masters to guide them. Bhagwan, the master is within. Meditation is meant to remove the ignorant idea that he is only external. If he were some stranger whom you awaited, he would be bound to disappear also. What would be the use of a transient being like that? But as long as you think you are separate or that you are the body, so long is the outer master also necessary, and he will appear as if with a body. When the wrong identification of yourself with the body ceases, the master will be found to be none other than the self. Devotee, will the Guru help us to know the self through initiation and so on? Bhagwan, does the Guru hold you by the hand and whisper in your ear? You may imagine him to be what you are yourself. Because you think you have a body, you think that he has also, and that he will do something tangible to you. His work lies within in the spiritual realm. Devotee, how is the Guru found? Bhagwan, God, who is immanent in his grace, takes pity on the loving devotee and manifests himself according to the devotee's development. The devotee thinks that he is a man and expects a relationship as between two physical bodies. But the Guru, who is God or the self incarnate, works from within, helps the man to see his mistakes and guides him in the right path until he realizes the self within. Devotee, what should the devotee do then? Bhagwan, he has only to act according to the words of the Master and work inwardly. The Master is both within and without. So he creates conditions to drive you inward and at the same time prepares the interior to drag you to the center. Thus he gives a push from without and exerts a pull from within so that you may be fixed at the center. You think that the world can be conquered by your own efforts when you are frustrated externally and are driven inward. You feel, oh, there is a power higher than man. The ego is a very powerful elephant which cannot be brought under control by any creature than powerful than a lion, which in this instance is none other than the Guru, whose very looks make the elephant like ego tremble and die. You will know in due course that your glory lies where, where you cease to exist. In order to gain that state, you should surrender yourself. Then the Master says that you are in a fit state to receive guidance, and he guides you. What is the significance of saying that the Guru is the manifestation of God or Self? Bhagwan spoke always from the point of view of non-duality, and from this point of view the disciple is also guided thus. The only difference is that the Guru has realized it and the disciple has not. Bhagwan, so long as you seek self-realization, the Guru is necessary. Guru is the self. Take Guru to be the real self and yourself to be the individual self. The disappearance of this sense of duality is the removal of ignorance. So long as duality persists in you, the Guru is necessary. Because you identify yourself with the body, you think the Guru too is the body, and you are not the body nor is the Guru. You are the self and so is the Guru. This knowledge is gained by what you call self-realization. You mistake the body for the Guru, but the Guru himself does not make that mistake. He is the formless self that is within you. He appears outwardly only to guide you. A curious paradox arises with the perfect Guru. The self-realized man in constant conscious identity with the self for the very reason that he is complete and perfect. Guru, he will not call himself a Guru or call any his disciple, since that would be an affirmation of relationship and therefore of duality. Though the Though he instructs his disciples, yet he does not call himself their Guru, realizing as he does that Guru and the disciple are mere conventions born of Maya, total illusion. And indeed, Bhagwan initiated his disciples through silence or in a dream, when at a distance, or by look when they were in his bodily presence, but he did not call them his disciples or give the formal initiation that postulates duality. He watched over them, constantly prescribed a discipline for them, verbally or guided them to it by the power of his silent grace. But he did not call himself their Guru. Devotee, is not grace the gift of the Guru, Bhagwan? God, grace and Guru are all synonymous and are both eternal and immanent. Is not the self already within? Is it for the Guru to bestow it by his look? If a Guru thinks so, he does not deserve that name. The books say there are many kinds of initiation. They also say that the Guru performed various rites with fire, water, incantations and so on, and call such fantastic performances initiation, as if the disciple became ripe only after such process were gone through by the Guru. If the individual is sought, he is nowhere to be found. Such is the Guru. Such is Dakshinamurti. What did he do? He sat silent. The disciples appeared before him. He maintained silence and their doubts were dispelled, which means that lost their individual identities. Jnana, spiritual knowledge, is that silent understanding and not the verbal definitions that are usually given for it. Silence is the most potent form of work, however vast and emphatic the scriptures may be, they fail in their effort. The Guru is quiet and peace prevails in all. His silence is vaster and more emphatic than all the scriptures put together. These questions arise because of the feeling that, in spite of having been here so long, heard so much, striven so hard, you have to not gained through anything. The process that goes on inside you is not apparent to you. In fact, the Guru is always within you. Not all felt the grace, the power of silent initiation immediately, but Bhagwan reassured them, devotee. It is said that one look of a Mahatma is enough, that idols, pilgrimages and so on are not so effective, but I have been here for 3 months and still do not know how I have been benefited by the look of the Maharshi. Bhagwan, the look has a purifying effect. Purification cannot be visualized, just as a piece of coal takes a long time to ignite and a piece of charcoal a shorter time, while a heap of gunpowder is ignited instantaneously. So it is with different types of men coming in contact with a Mahatma. Incidentally, the devotee who raised this question stayed on and became one of the staunchest and most devoted of all. Complete faith in the Guru was necessary, but as explained in the previous chapter, effort was also necessary. So I end this video here. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. And next video number 5 will continue the same topic as video number 4. Thanks. Namaskar.